So my name is Chun Feng Wong. I teach music here at Macalester College. My special area is ethnomusicology and world music. So I study ethnomusicology at UCLA, where I received my PhD in ethnomusicology. Ethnomusicology is a field in music studies, and the field focuses on the study of music in relation to the society and culture and history and a variety of other things. In ethnomusicology work, we talk to musicians. We ask them about why music is important and how is music important to their life. So we do field work, and we speak to them very often in their own languages, and we also learn to play their music. Ethnomusicology also studies, apart from the specific cultural areas, we also study music as a general human phenomenon. So we compare between and among musical cultures. We also study some common features of human beings making music. We study, for example, the psychology of making music. We study nationalism, for example. We also study multiple ways in which human beings express their identities in music. So this is pretty much about what the field of ethnomusicology is. It is a rather young discipline. It started in the mid-20th century, mostly during the post-war period, and where there is an increased interest in not only studying the music of other people, which had already been a field in the music research, but also to study the music of other people, other countries, other cultures, in a way that reflects what the indigenous people think, and also to understand what are the indigenous music theories, the indigenous ways and practices of making music. So that was what happened in the mid-20th century as the field of ethnomusicology started. So there is a very strong sense of studying the music in its own context, its own language. That's why ethnographic research, including field works, have been kind of the hallmark of the discipline. So my primary research has been on the music of the Uyghur people. The Uyghur people are Central Asian, Turkish-speaking people, and culturally and musically, they are part of the Central Asian, the Middle Eastern kind of cultural area. But geographically and politically, they are located in northwestern China, and there are probably over 10 million, maybe some, according to some census, there are more of Uyghur people living in northwest China right now. And they are being identified as one of China's 55 official ethnic minorities. Although there is a very strong sense of Uyghurs, the Uyghurs being a separate nation, a separate people with separate culture and identity. And so my research has primarily been on a variety of expressions of Uyghur music, ranging from the classical mukam or makam to some of the more folk and popular music expressions. I have also written about the representation of Uyghur music in contemporary and modern Chinese music as a way of understanding how the Uyghur and their music has been looked at among modern Chinese musicians and audience. The study of Uyghur music has, and the same as the study of Uyghur culture and other aspects of Uyghur society and history, has been rather controversial in recent time, particularly with the escalating tension between the Uyghur and the Chinese and the recent crackdown on Uyghur basic human rights, and also on the culture and other expressions of Uyghur societies. So I started my field work in the late 1990s and have been going back and forth for many times. I wrote my dissertation and my book later on Uyghur music, and I wrote about how music has been a way of Uyghur modern expression that is very efficient in a way of straddling between a kind of a Uyghur national ambition, a desire to become an independent nation, having its own culture and having its own identity, but on the other hand, living as very often reluctant citizens in China, living under very tight surveillance, where musical expressions and many other cultural expressions can only be done in ways that are very nuanced, and also the identities can also be only expressed in a way that is in a sense that is very much an example of what many scholars have identified as a hidden transcript, in a way that you can only express your own cultural identities and other aspects of your history and culture in a way that is primarily symbolic, right? When open confrontation with the authority has never been really an option. So I, like many other ethnomusicologists, I went into the field. Before going into the field, I started learning the Uyghur language, which is Turkic and Turkish. And then I went into the field and then studied the language and culture furthermore, and also the music as well. I was a visiting student at a local music conservatory, and I learned to play the music and learn and be a part of the music community over there. I also went around in the entire Uyghur region to talk to people in remote villages and different towns, and also professional musicians and popular musicians as well, as a part of my field research. And one of the instruments that I learned in the field was this one. So this is a plucked lute called the rawap. The name suggests similarities between this instrument and some other Central Asian and Middle Eastern instruments such as rubab and rabab in Afghanistan, in Uzbekistan, and some other areas in that region as well. This is basically a plucked lute with anywhere between 5 to 7 strings, and only one of the strings is plucked. The other ones are sympathetic strings. Sympathetic strings are there to primarily resonate and vibrate, and sometimes also play the role of drone. You just strum over that, but the melody is primarily on only one string. It is a kind of a hemispherical resonating body over there with a kind of animal horn, mostly decorative. And the resonating chamber is covered with a snake skin. It's a python skin. In some previous versions, it was cow skin or some other animal skin. But in more recent time, the python skin is preferred for its stability in terms of humidity change. There are frets that are not movable, and they're tied onto the resonating onto the fingerboard with mostly nylon strings, and these are the tuning packs over there. So the sympathetic strings play a role of giving a resonant background. So it sounds like this. So the resonance is still there, and they're tuned to reflect the particular scale of that particular piece. And this is a common feature. We see that in India, many instruments such as the sitar, such as the sarangi, have many sympathetic strings. We also see that in Tajikistan, in Uzbekistan, and some other traditions in the region as well. One of the more prominent features of this type of music is that there are many microtones and what people may refer to as quarter tones. Those are pitches between a black and a white key on the piano, or like a quarter step of a whole tone. But there's no steps of quarter tone on these frets. So what musicians usually do is to add ornaments between two pitches to create the effects of quarter tones. So something like that. Right, that oscillation being one of the quarter tonal pitches. Okay, and so this instrument has been used in a variety of contexts. It originally began as an instrument of the village, of the folk, where it is used to accompany singing and also to accompany religious rituals. But what happened, and this is one main part of my study, what happened after the 1950s when the Chinese took over was that a lot of traditional Uyghur music were repurposed to serve the so-called new function of the society, the socialist or communist propaganda role. So a lot of these instruments were changed and modified, and to make them basically louder, to make them more suitable for concert hall stage performance, to project the sound to a little bit louder. And they were also used in large ensembles, very much in the Soviet style, right? The kind of the folkloric orchestra, in order to play music that conforms to some of the ideologies embraced by the Communist Party. So this instrument also underwent some of these changes in the post-1950s era, and so most of the most of these frets were made into something similar to the Western 12-tone equal temperament. In other words, each step is, one step on the piano it looks like something like that. Something like that. This instrument is also made louder and a little bit longer, and then also to project the sound as well. It is also playing a prominent role in the newly formed folkloric orchestras or ethnic ensembles, usually playing some prominent melodic roles and also leading new compositions written in Western concerto forms in a lot of these new style of Uyghur music. So the classes I have been teaching at Macalester have been primarily in the field of ethnomusicology and world music. So I teach the undergraduate 100 level survey class called World Music. The class is primarily for non-music majors and non-music minors. So we go around the world basically and look at selected musical cultures and listen to their music and look at the relationship between music and society. I also teach higher level classes in ethnomusicology, which is a 400 level class for mostly third year and final year students at Macalester. Part of it is the reading through some of the ethnomusicology literature and getting ready for some of the post-undergraduate research and further study in the field of ethnomusicology. We also look at the history of ethnomusicology. We look at the practices of fieldwork and transcription. Students are required to do a mini fieldwork in the Twin Cities for that particular class. I also teach some topic classes, and one of the classes I have taught most, and I like most, is a class called Music, Race, and Ethnicity. I mostly look at music as an expression of race and ethnicity. We look at 4 or 5 different examples in 4 or 5 different units in the class, and we look into Black expressions in the Americas. We look at Asian American expressions. We also look at the concept of ethnicity and nationality under the Soviet bloc in Soviet Union and Russia today, and also in China, in some other places, and also including where I did my research on Uyghur and Central Asia as well. We also look at some of the expressions and also representation of race and ethnicity and Western European classical music. So we also listen to operas and listen to some works from the 18th century and 19th century European music in that class as well. I also teach a 200 level class on world music analysis and theory for primarily music majors and minors. And this class came out of my kind of commitment in putting together a class that is survey in nature of the world's music traditions, but also we don't shy away, we don't avoid using musical notation and other analytical tools in music. As a way of looking deeply into the structure, into the texture, into some of the more detailed aspects of music, and understand how these stylistic details can be related to the broader picture of the society and culture in our research and study.